afternoon panel. Try to keep it lively because we're post-lunch. I know that this is going to be a lively bunch. We're going to just do a quick around the horn. Everybody's going to introduce themselves, who they are, where they're from, what they do, and a fun fact. I gave a fun fact about Couch, so I'm Scott FullStory. So, all right, Andy.
Andy Ford, I lead product design for Kimberly-Clark. We make a lot of brands you guys may have in your house currently, things like Huggies, Kotex, Kleenex, Cottonelle, Depend. I am here from Atlanta, Georgia, and fun fact, I used to be a cheerleader in college.
Oh, yeah! Yeah, woo! It is a fun fact.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dasha Godanova. I'm here from JetBlue Airways, where I lead all of our digital product teams, so from all the way from design to implementation. And I don't think I had a fun fact ready, but I'll use a travel one. I've been to, I think, about 42 countries now, and that's why I work on an airline, and I can't wait to add 40 more to my list. So,
wow, nice.
I'm Matt Powell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at FTD. If you're over 40, you've probably heard of FTD. If you're under 40, you probably haven't. 112-year-old online seller of flowers today. But in 2 years, if we do our jobs, we want to be the biggest gifting destination on the internet. And what's cool about the way that we roll is we aggregate that internet scale demand at ftd.com and proflowers.com, and then we do fulfillment through 10,000 small businesses. And so I really love the business because it's a way to keep everything from getting big boxed. And I think the world's more interesting that way. Fun fact about me, I keep on my resume the fact that I'm a trained forklift operator. And the reason I'm a trained forklift operator is because my first day working at a lumber yard at 16, they put me on a forklift and it had a plaque that said to only be operated by trained forklift operators. And I pointed to that and my boss said, consider yourself trained.
Hi everyone, I'm Q Carlson. I am the Senior Vice President of Design at Project 44, a company that tracks everything in the supply chain to make sure that you get your products on time or as close to on time as we can reasonably expect in these day and age. We help some of the biggest brands manage their supply chain, make it more predictable and sustainable, get things back on track. So you can be like, oh man, everything's back on track. Thank you, that's all me. If you have a couch that got delayed or something like that, it's not my fault. I had nothing to do with it. Never heard of that. And Project 44 is in Chicago, so that's where I'm headquartered. Fun fact, I guess I'd just say is this is the third company that I've had FullStory at. So I'm what I think that, woo, exactly. Flywheel, exactly. So it's all in the family. It's great.
That's pretty good, as Kirsten said. Flywheel. I am curious, nobody chime in now, but who here has the most FullStories under their belt at different companies? It'd be something to consider. We'll take a poll by the end of this thing. I'm curious to know. Okay, let's go back. Q, let's stick with you.
Sure.
I tried. Stick with you. Same question for all of you. We're going around the horn. How did you come into contact with FullStory? What problem is it solving for you currently at your current place of employ?
Yeah, so I came into contact with FullStory back in 2016, where I was working in supply chain again out in San Francisco. And we had both an internal application and an external application. And for us, it was the ability to solve problems with our internal teams and flag it back to us in the product and design organization to make sure we could solve those problems. And then I brought it with me, and I refuse to work without FullStory to have that insight, we are in a lucky space in the B2B space to have very limited the privacy issues that I think a lot of the e-commerce and consumer-facing teams have, but we get to have an application experience. We get to watch how everyone uses it. I get to be really, really creepy over people's shoulders and see how they're using the application, no matter if they're in Paris or in Japan, and how they're managing their supply chain and trying to get things back on track. So for me, it's solving a visibility, how is the product working problem, amongst other things like bug reporting and things like that. I get a lot of joy from just sitting with popcorn and just watching, as well as delivering a lot of the KPIs that we need.
Maddie?
So I started working with FullStory in August of 2020. A couple of months after I joined FTD, FTD went bankrupt in the summer of 2019, and they brought in a new management team, the private equity firm that bought it. And we all started in March, April 2020. And we had a very clear intention to just drive an insanely irresponsible rate of change. most of the applications in our environment were 20 years old. The business didn't really understand what it was. So in order to move really quickly, we needed something that would provide some level of insurance that we understood the favorability and unfavorability of the change that we were driving. So we looked at you guys and we looked at a couple of your competitors and made what we think was a good decision to go with FullStory. Shameless plug, but
I agree. I totally agree.
and we use it everywhere. I mean, I have FullStory in anything that I have users in. So my CS agents use a proprietary tool, and soon, gladly, we've got FullStory in all of that, so that we can see even what our internal users are doing. Anything that a user touches that isn't a machine-to-machine connection, we put FullStory in so we can see how use is happening.
Nice.
Awesome. So our FullStory journey started about 5 years ago, or so right when I joined JetBlue. It was actually originally a cost play for us. So we were, as many of you probably have traveled over the last 2 years, we really have been trying to avoid how many hours customers have to spend on the phone calling us to do something we think that they should be able to do on the web. So we really wanted to bring on FullStory to figure out if they weren't able to do this transaction because they couldn't figure out how to do it from a UX or design perspective, if there was an error, if there was a system error, if something maybe was showing that they could but they actually couldn't. So that's really sort of where our FullStory journey started, is figuring out what was driving people to our call center. But soon after getting to the tool, we kind of realized there was going to be much larger reaching applications for us, not just in terms of our sort of managing and servicing, but also looking at our e-commerce stack, all of our interactions, A/B testing. So we've been really excited to kind of see the growth and the evolution of the FullStory platform as we've evolved ourselves and our products over the last 2 years.
About to start tearing up. Andy?
So I was exposed to it probably around 2016 or so as well, with a startup that I was with at the time. But when I started Kimberly-Clark about 4 years ago, I was looking for a tool. We have all of the brands that I've just listed in 175 countries, so you can do the math, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of websites. And so for us, what I wanted to do is help the product team understand the different cultural nuances. For example, we'll use a product like Huggies, or brand, I should say, and a lot of the thinking had been, well, a mom in Argentina is different than a mom in the US versus the UK versus Australia, whatever the case may be. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do was to understand, is that really true, you know? And at the end of the day, what that helps us do is understand, you think about a lot of the products that we make, they're not glamorous, it's poo, period, pee, and snot. But for the most part, these are parts of everyday life, and they're not glamorous. And I think most people want to understand, how do I get the best possible product at the best possible price? And all these things, generally speaking, accompany life stages. And so for us, it really kind of helps us to get very deep in terms of understanding what our consumers are looking for, how we can help best meet their needs. Now, on top of that, you know, we run a very large supply chain logistics aspect in terms of getting all these products made into the Walmarts, Targets, grocery stores of the world. And so we actually got FullStory on a lot of our internal tools as well to understand how our 46,000 people that work at Kimberly-Clark are using a lot of our internal tools as well. So it's helping to not only expand a lot of what we're doing on the consumer side, but also how we can drive adoption for a lot of our internal tools as well.
That's awesome. Okay. Anybody can jump in on this one. This is like the fun FullStory panel top question, which is like, what was an aha moment that you experienced anecdotally with FullStory, because of FullStory, where you're like, oh my gosh, yes, here's the insight, this is what we need to fix, or something along those lines?
I got a good one from last week.
Okay, recency bias.
Yeah, right. So one of our big things is we recognize that it's silly to just be selling flowers, right? We want to expand into gifting more broadly. The way I keep describing it is just we're in Coca-Colaville, right? Imagine if they only sold brown cola. Like, what a dumb play that would be, because in order to do brown cola, you got to be good at logistics and taste and preference and all this stuff that you can sell more beverages. So we're expanding, and we're doing that via our member network. And so we've done this cool partnership with Milk Bar as a pilot. So 55, 60 of our members are selling Milk Bar products, so it's pretty limited, right? And the sales team was trying to figure out where to go next, like who are the next best markets as we scale this program up. And so the sales leader, who happens to be my brother, called me and was like, hey, how do I figure out where people are trying to buy Milk Bar that they can't, you know? And literally within 90 minutes, we had him an answer from FullStory, like a segment he could look at, and they could watch those interactions. They could see how much audience there was there of people that were trying to buy this product but couldn't because we didn't have fulfillment in that place. Yeah. And that would have been a really difficult question to answer, particularly without having planned for instrumentation. And it was just such a great example of like the non-obvious ways that the platform can be really, really valuable.
We had a similar one on mobile where we're in Turkey, and in Turkey, truck driving is very different. You don't get kind of a load assigned to you by a dispatcher. You go to a bazaar and you pick up a load. And for us, we were seeing how our conversion rate of our onboarding, so we do supply chain, we're tracking trucks. Where are they? Are they going to get there on time? Who's driving it? And for us, it was this moment of like, we didn't realize that we weren't, that people don't have SMS turned on their cell phone plans, that they were getting an SMS verification message in the onboarding flow. Like, why is our conversion so poor in Turkey, and why is this challenged? For us to get our drivers on board, why aren't they, jumping on this? And we found a couple different parts of that flow that were just like total non-starters. People were giving dispatchers putting their own phone numbers in and getting the text messages and then, WhatsApping the code to, we dug into this to the driver. Really crazy things to get around our rigid onboarding flow. So it was a very easy moment to be like, why is this part of the conversion breaking so hard in this specific market? And how do we jump in and like figure out how to solve that? And it sparked a lot of conversations of like, why does everyone stop on the screen? Like, what is happening? And that was a really great way to spend time with our dispatching teams out there and understand how we can improve that.
I'll take that one next. So I'm always of the adage that the customer is always right, but between us, that's not always necessarily the case. So really back when we first started using FullStory, we get a lot of customer feedback, and one of my favorite things to like, spend time on is actually reading customer feedback, but sometimes you'll get a 5-paragraph email in multiple colors and caps.
I have a lot of feelings.
Of sort of all the things that went wrong and, all the things that went wrong on the website and the employees and everything. And we really dig into those use cases because we want to try to understand what can we learn, what can we improve. And there are instances when you get one of those 5-paragraph emails and you look at their FullStory session and you can say, actually, we didn't do anything here. It was like the website worked correctly. I'm sorry you felt that it was broken, but we looked at your 2-hour session and you bought the flight, you chose what you did, and you put in your information. So sometimes it's very nice to just.
Are they trying to get out of the flight?
Oh, absolutely. Like they'll say, well, not just the flight. They'll say you also owe me $10,000 for my ruined Disney vacation and for my car rental. And so it's sometimes really nice to be able to say, like, this is you actually going
you
through our website.
call them back and you're like, actually, we have FullStory, and so we're absolutely not having
We don't
any
say
of
your
that.
name, but we do say, we do
Thank
have
you
a
for
record
keeping
of you,
notice.
and this is what happened. So, we use that in that way, too.
I had a meeting one day at 11:30, and at 11:29, I popped into FullStory. There was an idea about chasing after something that was going to take a lot of time and complexity to build. I went into FullStory and I said, hey, of the 85,000 sessions that we've captured up to this month, 12 people have gone to that thing. That meeting was over in 1 minute.
Wow.
So I have to be very judicious with our team's time, and we can't, chase after things like that.
Wow, that's right. FullStory is a defensive mechanism in many, many ways. Seems to be a theme that's bubbling out of that. I didn't hear out of any of you, although it's one of those cases that shows up a fair bit. It's like, yeah, I create a segment of executives in the company so we can know when executives in the company hit the site and are trying to do that, or executive spouses in the company so we keep an eye. How many of you guys have, I'm just panel to the room, how many people have executive and executive spouse segments set up? All right, well, there's a pro tip for you, I suppose. Okay, what other organizations within your company have you tried to say, hey, you guys should be using FullStory? Take it either way, and they've either said, I don't know, and you're trying to push, and maybe we can help you try to solve that problem, or they've been like, oh, thank you so much. I'm curious about how you guys have spread throughout the organization. Potpourri, whoever wants it.
I was going to say, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I actually really loved it. This was at the very beginning, but getting our engineers in with it, the product folks. Engineers have their own tools, right? They're looking at logs, they're looking at code and sort of product really is always working with them, but we kind of look at our own tools, and it's when our engineers started asking us access to the developer tooling in FullStory that we were like, wait, what are you doing in there? And because all of our developers came to us and said, well, actually, I watched this FullStory session about this customer, and I don't know if I agree with the user experience that you guys are thinking about, and I love
so
that.
they're starting to critique the
They're
user
starting-
experience.
But I loved that because I think that makes a better whole. So for us, I think it was really being in there with all of our engineering and kind of our technology partners and sort of being able to troubleshoot for sessions. Or if you have a customer report of something going on, we can all kind of jump in and see it. So yeah, I think for us, it's our engineering teams that I think we found the most value being in it together.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's the way that we talk about site experience, right? So like similarly, when we get a VOC, a voice of the customer thing, it includes a FullStory link. So it just becomes the common language for talking about, what's actually happening with a session. And because our teams are domain designed, not functionally aligned, it doesn't end up being, it's not hard to drive adoption, right? Like pretty much you draw the process into the space and it just happens. So like SRE uses it for incident response. If something's going sideways, we quickly go find it that way. We use it for validating, a potential incident. So like, hey, we heard this thing happened. We go look at the session and we're like, well, yeah, that happened because that person's an idiot. That's not a platform problem. And I think that there was, FullStory came in on the back of so much organizational change. It's just one of the many things that we adjusted that's become common language for us. I can't think of anywhere where there's like resistance to it, but that's probably because we flipped leadership over in the whole company. So everybody's like, this is the way that we work, right?
Gio?
I think we've had a lot of different teams experience FullStory in different moments, and that's the part that, like, for us on the design organization, we own these metrics around usage and sessions, and so it started with us reporting out screenshots of a FullStory dashboard as the way that I report my own teams. How do we do this quarter? Are we moving people? For context, we bought a series of companies and had 5 or 6 different properties that last week we announced a new platform that's a unified experience for our customers. And so we're tracking people who are native to that platform, so new customers that came directly onto that, versus our legacy team of, legacy groups of customers and how they're migrating to this new platform. And so for us, it's a lot of just like reporting out to this and then digging into that to understand with the sales team, like, why are these point of POVs that are happening? Why aren't we getting engagement? And then our designers will sit with those teams and dig into like, what are the use cases that are going on that are preventing that engagement? But that's kind of the bridge point of these like dashboards and data metrics into why, before you even get to a session replay necessarily, it's just why did you have this, why are we struggling in Japan? Why are we struggling in this market? What's the use case there? Let's talk with the sales organization, the customer success organization, dig into why these POVs may or may not be working as well.
In our case, I brought FullStory in for the product design team so we could really understand what's working, efficient use of real estate, journeys, those sorts of things. We did have someone from afar who was admiring what we were pushing, Lauren. And so Lauren grabbed Larry, the intern, and they put one of our brands under hyper-focus for a month. Came back with what they called 10 no regrets moves. 8 of them were really a lot of simple technical glitches that really needed to be fixed. 2 of them were intended for the product design team, but that has now become something that they have started to do moving forward. So it's good to see that, beyond us, the rest of the organization is really kind of starting to embrace FullStory and understanding its full capabilities.
So we can lift up a little bit here. We don't have to be super FullStory, hyper-focused. We're all digital experience practitioners here, and so we want to share practices that'll be helpful. Gibson Biddle earlier today had some very cool metrics about how they were thinking about sort of conversion rates and different things in very specific ways. I'd be curious if any of you have sort of a metric that you track that you think is unique to you or might be, unlock an idea for someone else in this room.
Yeah, I got one that's not a FullStory thing, but
yeah, that's fine.
It's this kind of thought. One of our challenges is that we're doing fulfillment, with 10,000 endpoints, right? And they're all each of these members has the decision about each order, whether they want to take it or not. Like part of our value prop is like, we're not, like DoorDash or Uber making you do the fulfillment. Here's the thing, do you want this thing or not? And then, if not, we give it to somebody else. One of the things that we know is that if we don't land the order correctly the first time, it has a significantly higher rate of having a problem, right? So if the first member chooses not to fulfill it, it's like 80% more likely to have low NPS, to end up refunded, all that jazz. So we spent a lot of time on thinking about how do we make sure we get that first landing right, which is the same kind of proxy metric that I think it was talking about. It's like, how do you figure out what things are predictive? And before FTD, I spent 10 years in agency land working on BMW. One of the things we knew in that world is if we could get you to build your own car, we were 35% more likely to buy a car, right? So like those kinds of metrics that are like, it's ignoring the rest of the happy path in a way and saying like, this thing is actually causal of the outcome, not just corollary, and then how do you get to it? So those are two examples of things like that I found really powerful. You can't look at everything to optimize. You need to optimize to a thing.
Yeah.
So how do you pick a thing that's going to be predictive of a bunch of the outcome you need to drive?
I dig it. Anybody else?
We've been having a lot of conversations lately about friction and how do you measure friction in a user experience. And I think it's very specific also to the product that you are working with. And I think that could mean different things to different people. So we've talked, for example, do we measure how many clicks does it take, right? You think of the sort of one-click shopping experience, or how many screens do you see, or how many decision points do you have to encounter before you check out, or maybe how many variations or paths you could potentially follow, right? There's the, and then we always also talk about, are we solving sort of for 10% of our users? Are we solving for 90% of our users? Because at least and I think it's the same for everyone here. As an airline, right, we have customers that are in their 70s or 80s, but we also have customers that, just turned 20. And probably have never booked a flight still regardless. So we kind of talk a lot about friction and trying to think about the different customer use cases that we have. And I think FullStory, right, will be something we'll use for some of those, but it's just a constant debate we always have of how do you define friction and what that means for your company and for your customer.
How are you defining it now?
I think it depends for the product for us, right? For us, it's if you're using a kiosk, it's really like how many screens and how many times do you have to tap the screen until you can get up and go for 90% of your transactions, versus for something like e-commerce, it's probably less specific than that because there's also so many things and variations that you're trying to achieve. So we're finding that sort of it's not a one size fits all.
Right, like if you just want to take a vacation and you're happy with a variety of options, then a bunch of searching might be okay because you're looking for something, but something might be a business trip that needs to be faster.
Yeah.
So how do you figure out what
like
cohorts
time spent on website? On one hand, I want people to spend more time on my website because it means that they're experiencing my brand. On the other hand, I don't think anyone in this room says, I would love to just spend more time booking a ticket.
Totally.
So
time on site always feels like a bad measure in that way. It's like nobody wants to spend time on your website. They want the thing.
Exactly, unless you're on TikTok, I guess.
Well, alternatively, for us, when we think about an application that isn't just a consumer-facing one, for us, it's like how long are a user at a business whose job it is to be in this application. For us, it's actually how much can we increase that time spent. So we're looking at our partner, our customers who are these big brands like Starbucks. How long can we have their team? Like how much can we be the first tab in their browser? And we want to have that share of their time managing freight. For us in logistics. So it's actually interesting, like a consumer, I agree, you want to be on our consumer-facing tracking pages that you might get from like Abercrombie & Fitch or Nordstrom. We want you to get in and get the data, like, oh, my order's going to be here tomorrow, dope, and then like close out. It is interesting when you the metric of how many times people are checking versus like size of order is really fun. But some other interesting metrics around like the time spent one for us is about how much can we get an operational user to spend time in us because we're so valuable to their day that they're keeping us logged in, they're keeping us on that first tab.
To your point, Joshua, we actually, I don't know how many people remember this, launched, seemed like a great idea at the time, RageGrade, right? So we could, for any given segment, we could try to compare visits across customers based on some heuristics and patterns, and it didn't really pan out. Like nobody could trust it. It was a little bit black box. Every journey is a little bit different. And so one of the hard things to do when you build a product is take something back out and not continue to double down on that. But I think the team made the right call. And we're like, we're just not getting this right. We're going to yank RageGrade out. But leading to the next question here, what would you like FullStory to just tell you that it doesn't tell you today? Like magic wand is what Agatha would call this. What's the magic wand thing that you would like out of FullStory right now?
I mean, I think Gibbs talked about it today, like just convert faster, better, 2% more.
Well, yes, but the bird falls over.
Yeah, exactly, until the world falls over. I think for us, it's like, for a lot of the complicated interactions that we're looking at, it's like, I wish you could just say, like, does this user get it? Do they get what's going on? Or are they lost? Like, I kind of think they got it, but I think there's some interesting challenges there. Like, are you just lost? Like, are you okay, bud?
Well, isn't that a design problem? Aren't we just not, we've got to accommodate for my mom.
But I guess it depends on like, maybe on some of these B2C applications, we are needing to do more of that and accommodate for that. But I think when I see a user just like, they're consistently jumping pages, I'm just like, are you hurt? Like, what's going on? Like, what is happening?
Is your mouse broken?
Like, I just don't know what's happening. I'm like, I need to call you, and then I have to be like, hey, are you okay? Like, did you fall down? Like, did your cat get hold of your computer? I just want to understand better, like, when I feel like you watch a session, you're just like, this user's just lost. Like,
Well, and you can't kind of design for everybody. Otherwise, like, all the food is going to be shitty, right? Like, not everyone has a good palate. Like, I shouldn't be drinking wine. I have no taste. So you can't make wine for me. Just give me my Jack Daniels and I'll be happy. But you know what I mean? There's got to be a line.
so someone's like lost cause.
only
Just
3
like,
o'clock,
here's,
guys.
Can you create an auto segment for me called Lost Cause Users or Misfits Islands of Toys? And he's like, go to the Misfit Islands. Like, here's everyone who just like, doesn't get it. They're over there. Don't design for these people.
Isn't this, I mean, look, okay, the ideal here is perfect digital experience down the road. This is where personalization comes in. And, you know, Dasha, you talked about people that have never booked a flight before and 80-year-olds. No judgment if you're 80. You know, my mind immediately was like, well, make the font bigger for the 80-year-olds. And then, you know, have a mom hold hands for the 20-year-olds. But at some point in the far-flung future, shouldn't we have a design for every one of those misfits that comes in? Wouldn't that be cool? Is that even possible? Am I just dreaming?
No, we shouldn't do
CEO
that.
hand-waving ideal future worlds.
Are they worth it though, Scott? Like,
Absolutely.
If I was in here just lost in FullStory all day long, and you're just like, I really want to design for that small account there that like is using it. I think you have to make the trade-offs. That you have to understand who you're targeting. Are these the right type of people to double down and invest in? That's
It can be difficult to meet the power user's need while also trying to meet the other person's need. And so you in some cases, you have to make a choice. And certainly the way that choice plays out, I think, is economic. I work in private equity. What's the EBIT impact, right? And that's the way you make the decision.
FullStory adjusted EBITDA.
And personalization, I think, is a part of it. But the most uncomfortable part for me of Gibson's talk today was about the way the interface adjusts in Netflix, because I do get that it drives the outcome, but I know as a user that it irritates me. Because there are times when I go in and it's like I'm logged in via my parents' account or my account or whatever, and I'm like, oh great, I can't find the thing that should be where I want it to be. Like there's a consistency that needs to occur, I think, too. Otherwise, it's sort of mean to users. Like, imagine if every time you went to your house adjusted to what it think you wanted that day.
That sounds awesome to me.
I don't know if it does. Maybe you have to
that's a
pee
damn
really
nightmare.
bad and your house made the wrong
Well,
call. and you
the
can't
toilet's
find
right next to the front door.
But assuming the house makes the right call, but I think that's the problem. Like, there's something about our ability to understand a system based on its being predictable. So, like, I don't know, if you can find a way to siphon different users off into different environments, makes sense for them, great. But I just think you have to be a little careful about it, because if the entire building adjusts itself around the room that you're standing in based on the way it's reading your emotions, I think that could be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm not ready to give up on it yet. It's sci-fi. Imagine a sci-fi world where this is true. Not like next week or anything. By the way, is Gibson Bill still in the room? I am. Oh, okay. Well, then I won't say that. No. Gibson, I got to say, I'm curious. You don't have to answer this, but I'm going to speak. Does anybody like it in Netflix when it starts auto-playing the music if you accidentally mouse over that? That is the most, it drives me crazy. Why did they do that, Gibson?
In general, it's been tested. It improves their metrics. But I will nicely say this. You and everyone in this room is a freak. You're not normal people.
But here's a great example, right? It's like somehow Netflix should not just A/B test for Gen Pop. It should be like, okay, Scott's a cranky old guy, and he doesn't want the music playing, and so we're going to A/B/C test based on my persona a little bit. I mean, it's doing it with the movies.
There's also more to life than metrics. Not everything can be metric. Like, part of brand, this is why I love the decision, the $20 million give up that you didn't like, is because it is brand driven. If you just let the metrics drive the bus, it ends up being a little personality-less.
Facebook is the word that he's looking for.
I had a different FANG company in mind, but yes.
Yes.
I mean, how do you guys feel about that?
Yes.
Like, to me, it seems like the metrics are critically important, but you also have to make choices about the world you're trying to create for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, we make that decision, I think, all day long when we think about prioritizing features, because we know, for example, we're trying to say upsell a fare, and we know that if we hide the button and make it really hard to click, you're most likely to click somewhere else, and that way we'll get the sale. But that's also like a dark pattern that we as a brand don't really want to do, even though we know it's going to make us more money.
Right.
And that's a very interesting conversation to have with our revenue management and our finance teams, because we're like, well, we yes, maybe putting a checkbox here is going to be the most effective way of achieving $12 million, but like, can we look at the broader scope of what we're trying to do? And that's, at an airline, that's always a harder conversation to have in terms of our cost focus. But we always think about, like, we were doing PI planning now for the quarter, and we always reserve a bucket for, like, what do we think is the right thing to do? So we're going to have, our revenue initiatives, our cost initiatives, our company strategic initiatives, but I'm always want the team to have time reserved of just, like, do whatever you think is right, whether that's a fun animation or putting an image somewhere, or you want to test something that maybe it's not going to have any metrics associated at all, but that we think will just kind of create that special experience. That, like, that's what makes us all want to come to work,
Totally.
in the end of the day.
Otherwise, the robots can do
You
it.
got a clap. You got a clap out of that. That was nice. That was good.
I just said otherwise the robots can do the work. Like there needs to be, there's a human element to design choices that is critically important for something to stand for something. Otherwise, it just becomes an over-optimized mud pie.
Okay, you got a clap on that
You get
too.
a cup too.
Nice. Thank you.
Well, in our case, though, like, we run a lot of, like, digital experiments. We actually are trying to create digital products that accompany our physical products. And so we'll have some experiments that we run globally, and we'll take a look at something that we'll launch in the UK, and we'll see how it does compared to Australia. And ultimately what will happen is we'll take a lot of those insights and be able to bring that back to our audience here in North America to then have that much more of an optimized experience. So, we try to run some things where we experiment and see what's going to happen.
Gibson talked so much. Glad you're here, Gibson. So much about experimentation this morning. We haven't really touched on it too much in the panel. I'm curious if you guys have any special sauce. Do you do a lot of it? Do you wish you did more of it? Why don't you do more of it?
It doesn't tell you why it worked. Like, that's the biggest thing that I struggle with experimentation, A/B testing. This happened, and you're like, cool, I need to go talk to users and, like, what was happening to them. And it doesn't give you the qualitative. And I think it's one of the things I love about session recording is I can have a metric and a dashboard and dive into a qualitative, give me qualitative reasoning for it. I think for me it's so hard to want to experiment and test things when we have a smaller user base perhaps in certain markets. Like, how long will it take to get to statistical significance? I'll try to say that 3 times fast. But in B2B, like, you can maybe have a lot smaller of that kind of statistical significance, like the computer telling us what's right? Does it work or not? But it's not telling you why it worked. There could have been other reasons, and it could be for not reasons you're excited about.
People still add their why bias too when you tell the story of what, and it's like, well, this is why, which is completely an assumption based on that data.
Right, you made more money, but it's a dark pattern, or maybe people can't read it, and you're like, well, is that really what we want to be doing? Like, yeah, we adjusted these buttons, but now people are getting through 10 times faster, but is that even good? Like, we've seen a lot of times where I've had to add friction to the user experience because it's so critical they really understand what's happening in a moment that maybe has no error recovery, it's just error prevention the entire way, like, or there's just flows that, like, we know you'll be more successful in our business if we put extra friction in here.
Tell me how you guys are going about understanding who your customers are today. How important is it throughout the organization, and how are you going about doing it?
For us, I mean, it depends on the brand, because we literally make products from cradle to the grave type thing, And I think
The taglines of Kimberly Clark is unbelievable here.
Like snot and poop and pee and graves.
But I think for us, I mean, for the most part, it's really kind of understanding really what our consumer looks like, because ultimately things that we're doing right now, it's so fragmented and hundreds of different experiences that we're trying to really kind of figure out what is the best ideal experience so we can scale that globally.
Yeah. Dasha?
You know, I think it's something that we struggle with, and I think it's because it's just really, I think it's difficult. I mean, I'd love to hear from you guys if you have your customer segments and you know exactly who fits in those buckets and what they want. I mean, for us, and especially in the last few years, that's been ever changing anyway. So whatever research data we had, sort of pre-pandemic, we've kind of thrown out the window at this point anyway. I mean, I think it's the right thing for you to do to continue to try to figure out what are the segments. But we also have to move fast, and we have to keep revenue and cost considerations in mind. So to your original point around testing, like, do I wish I could test everything? Yes. Do I have time to test everything? Never. And so you make a lot of gut-based decisions. And same thing with the customer segments. Sometimes you kind of know, okay, this might work for our top tier user, maybe this might work for the person that lives in Dominican Republic and doesn't speak English, but like, I have no idea, but let's put it out and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, we'll pull it back. So I think for us, I don't think I'm answering your question in terms of like user segments. I think it's really important. It's just incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
It's hard to get, the problem is that they're dynamic, right? And it's expensive to do good segmentation, and it takes a long time. And how long does it stay valid and accurate? Is it really useful? It's interesting. I'm excited this year because we just did a big like omnibus study with Kelton to get more understanding of our users and their buying habits. But we did that really intentionally because we're pivoting the business to expand past flowers. And it's like, all right, well, what else is most important, and how does that align with the other things that we want to do? But we work hard to try to bring all the pieces together, like the data that we have, data from folks like Experian, data from this Kelton research, to do the best that we can. But I would still give it a C- at best in terms of real customer insight. And then to the testing point, just because it's kind of tickling my brain, the question that you asked, Scott. I've been really frustrated personally with the way we've been approaching testing the last 6 months, because it's been bullshit incrementalism. And like, I just don't have time to test our way to an experience through 6 rounds of like statistical significance over minor changes in the interface. Like we added this new add-on panel to our product detail pages, and it looked like shit. And when we showed it in the demo, I was like, why does it look like this? And the UX designer pulled me aside and was like, this is not what I designed. This is just the first test. And I was like, why are we testing something that we know sucks? Why don't we test the thing that we think is right and then iterate against that instead of like spend a year? So we just went through this whole thing and we made a couple of agreements. One, testing is a tool, not a gate. So it's not a thing you have to pass through, because if you know something is right and you're right about it, then who cares? Testing is a tool. And I think that was a big unlock, because the person who runs the web experience, I think, had been shackled by the feeling that she had to test everything before she could put it in site. So we took those shackles off, which led to a whole bunch of, we're just going to do this stuff, which is great. And then past that, I was like, look, let's move to a barbell, where at one end of the barbell is a lot of high velocity tests that we expect incrementality from, that can be executed without engineering resource, like things that can be done in Optimizely Web by the web ops team without touching engineers. And just do a ton of them, and I don't care, get 5 basis points at a time, whatever. And then the other stuff, take huge swings. Don't do this crappy stuff in the middle where we're taking little steps and taking forever to get it right. Place big bets on things that we think will work and render the experience the way we think it should be. And if it takes 4 sprints to build a test, it takes 4 sprints, instead of like 1 sprint and something that doesn't really move the needle. For us, I think that's going to be a huge change, because we were just moving so slowly at things that we know. And if you ask somebody, like, do you think this is right? No. What do you think we should do? We should do that. Does anybody disagree? No. Why are we testing it?
Can be a crutch, I guess. Q.
Yeah, agreed with bullshit and incrementalism. I think for us, we spend time on JetBlue to go to our customers. We spend time in the air going out to them and spending time to understand who they are in person. It's hard for us when we're working with our users who have 6 displays up and we're on one of them to really have the understanding of the human factors that are involved with using our software against any other tool they're using from Oracle or SAP or some other nightmare ERP that they're living in. And so for us, it's about the fact that we're this modern experience for them. So when we had these 5 different properties that were merging into one experience, what we did is we obviously just started with we had some early access customers, and we inbox 0 those sessions every day. We have calls every week with them with our design organization, and we're testing and spending time in person to understand who they are. And those represent the marquee of who we want to be going after in the future. Here's who we want to be our customers going on in the future. And so those are the launch partners for us. And from there, now it's about scaling that. So we're understanding our segments better and better. We're prioritizing the marquee example of who we want to be working with along the way. And that's a combination of like the entire organization agreeing that they are the marquee example based on money and use cases and challenges that they have and the regionality and where they are. And so we'll spend time with them, we understand who they are. And we also don't let people use silly persona names for anything. Like when I say who's using this, you better tell me the person's name and their job title and the company they work at. There's no Transportation Tina. Like,
Just not having it with Transportation
fuck
Tina.
Transportation Tina. We're not about her. I'm talking about Ashley at this one company, and this is her role as a program manager, and she's the champion leading this, and this is Shannon at coffee company doing this thing, and like for us, that's like who we talk about.
Yeah.
And so in meetings, we're saying their names all the time.
Yeah.
And because we're referencing a real human, it changes the tone of the conversation entirely.
Well, it also gives you that escape hatch to be like, well, let's just call.
Let me text Ashley and be like,
Yes.
hey girl, what you think? And she's just like, no.
Oh,
And
no,
we're
she
like,
was,
cool.
she was no.
We'll
You're
talk
gonna have a
on
weird
Tuesday.
moment later when you meet Transportation Tina, who's in the audience. Be very annoyed at you.
She's gonna be really annoyed. She doesn't exist, but she'll be very annoyed that I said that.
You are all wrong, by the way. The answer is FullStory is giving you the bootstrap to A/B test more. So
That's right. Thank you.
that answer is sponsored by Optimizely, one of the sponsors of this conference. So welcome.
Thank you,
FTD
Optimize.
partner.
Okay, getting closer on time. So let's do this. Company that you admire that does wonderful, wonderful digital experience. All right, coming back to you, Dasha.
I've got it. I was going to say Headspace.
Oh.
I actually, so Headspace, for those who don't do it, is sort of like a meditation app. It has a lot of different features. We all need some downtime for our brains these days. What I love about, and they've gone through many iterations even since I've gotten the app a few years ago. And listen, we all work in digital and we love changing our products, but when other products change on us, we're like, wow, I don't know about that. So
You're like, what the hell?
yeah, what were they thinking? And then over time, you're like, oh, I guess I can see what they were thinking. What I love about Headspace is that, their product is about bringing calm, and I feel like their app is very calming to use. And I don't really know how they've achieved it, but it actually evokes an emotion in me. The experience does, at least for me. And I think about how they have small animations about sort of like when you first open the app, there's like a little imagery, sort of like breathe in and breathe out. There's sort of that sort of imagery and sort of how you move and maybe how quickly it loads. So if I think about it, maybe I can sort of think about the emotion that they're trying to evoke. But I love that. I think it's one of those apps that I just always look forward to opening. So that'd be my answer.
I would say Andy is the name of the gentleman who whispers in my ears
Yes,
when I
Andy,
meditate with
Andy's
Headspace.
What he could do if he was using some dark patterns, just whispering in our ears.
Maybe he's done it and we just don't know. He's hypnotizing us. We don't know. It is. I agree with you. We gave it to. It was the FullStory company gift for a holiday season when we were much smaller because it was such a great app experience. So that's a good one. Andy?
Still thinking.
Okay. Maddie?
So two come to mind, and I feel bad saying one because it's Delta. I think they do a great job.
It's okay.
I feel bad about
As
it.
long as you don't say ours is the worst.
No, the reality is, I used to fly JetBlue all the time. I dated a flight attendant for a while. That would have been another fun fact. Now I'm a SkyTeam guy. And the other is 1Password. I don't know if you don't use 1Password, you're out of your mind, and you should immediately begin using 1Password because it's the only responsible way to manage passwords, and the experience is dynamite. Like, you never have to think about passwords ever again. You biometrically log in with your face or your finger. It works everywhere. It brings the passwords up in mobile apps, on the web. It'll autofill your credit card data and everything. And it's really encrypted, which means if you lose your master password and your secret key to get in, your data's gone. They can't get to it either. So it's like secure, works everywhere, is amazing, and I never ever have to think about passwords. I just touch things and look at them.
Boy, that's such a great promotion, by the way. I hope you guys promote FullStory everywhere you go that much. Because by the way, it just seems like there's there's so much to manage with passwords and stuff. It seems like, but to hear you be like, no, it's actually pretty easy.
My mother is 71. My mother is a FullStory user. My father is 73. He carries around, I shit you not, a 25-page printed list of passwords stapled together. And he will not change because he thinks that's easier than one password. But my mom is working on him because of their shared passwords. That's the other thing. Like sometimes like my wife needs something. They have a concept of private and shared vaults. So she'll be like, hey, can you let me into that thing? I can move like the login for something that I would normally keep private. My wife will use it, move it back out. Like share it with a friend that way. It's amazing. And it's really, really thoughtful for like the kinds of friction that we encounter as people who need to secure our digital identity. So it's like, it's neat because like you often think about like an app, right? Like this thing should be delivered in this mobile box or whatever, but it really lives everywhere. You know, it's browser extensions, it's app, it's all these things. So it's an ecosystem that's
pretty good. Pretty good. Cute.
I think one that we all probably use is Target, or as I like to say, Target. And for them, for me, it's like when I go to the store, being able to, the iBeacon thing just works seamlessly of helping me navigate to where this product is. They'll tell me exactly where I am and where the product is and how many aisles down it's going to be. It's amazing. The drive-up experience. If you talk about an iterative, like design-driven process, I would love to meet some of the Target designers who just in the middle of the pandemic were just like changing things and like watching people drive up to cars. I just kind of imagine them like in the parking lot watching people do the drive up and the pickup experience kept changing every week by week because it was like, and I was like, oh, this is getting better. This like makes more sense. I like how this is going. And oh, that was weird. And it's like, oh, that's gone. Okay, good. And so that was kind of very interesting to watch. I think Target does a fabulous job of their digital platforms, not web, but mobile, definitely.
Did you say pandemic?
Yeah, Pandemi or Pandemi Lovato, like anything you want to, just a different way to
I've
call
said
it.
the Covies before, but I've never heard pandemic. So
Pandemic. Now you know.
Thank you.
All right, Andy, you've had time to think.
I would have kicked myself for not having thought of this after leaving the stage. Now, this is a little bit niche because I do play guitar, but in terms of like what Fender is doing, Fender has really gravitated towards the digital evolution of these things. Typically, you have people playing on stage. A lot of these things are very analog. They've moved all of that to the phone, which now then transports itself over to the amps as well as anything else that you may be playing. The guitar itself has not changed, but in terms of the way that they're approaching it, they are all over digital.
That's good. Cool. It's good. You can win anywhere on digital. Okay, flipping it around, let's turn that frown upside down, or vice versa. What's a very frustrating digital experience? And listen, if these fine folks happen to say someone that is in this room, it's okay. It's a safe space, except for we're streaming. And so we're going to work with you to make sure that we're getting a good digital experience just in case that happens. Okay.
AWS.
AWS. Okay, well, they're
The
not
technical
in this
product is amazing. The interfaces make you want to blow your brains out.
Okay. All right. That's why? Just
It doesn't look like they care about that. That would be my argument. Like it just there's no like there's or they're doing it all in a metric-driven way without worrying about the fact that there's a whole plateau shift they could kind of make. But they're really, really difficult. And it's funny because technically the product is much better than GCP, arguably. But the GCP interfaces are significantly better. And I say that as I have a 5-year, 8-figure GCP commit.
there you go.
So
Partners, GCP.
they're my partner. But
glad they're here.
you got to be able to tell you're part of it. In fact, I've told them that.
As a practitioner, do you just see the obvious things that they should fix? Or are you like, guys, why are we funding?
Actually, no. When I look at AWS, it scares me.
Well,
like
that's
when I
why
look
I
at the interfaces, I look at them like, whoa, I don't even, it's
right.
so complicated and so difficult to understand, I can't even begin to imagine where they should start.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
it's that confusing. Like, it doesn't, try to do anything simple in AWS, like anything. Like, find out where your billing is and try to change a credit card on something. And I'm not usually lost.
Sales
in
team, somebody call AWS. Okay.
Like Hulu or HBO Max actively hate me. I think they actively hate me. I don't know if I've ever and get to go work on them with the Hulu thing. I open the app and it's like every time it's like nothing you want. Don't worry, you can't find anything you're watching right now. Not about that.
They do hide what you're watching.
They hide everything that you ever could want in their app. I was like,
Hide what you're watching.
they hide everything you're watching. They hide everything you care about. Every like end screen is just like, what if we moved you to a different show? And I'm like, I'm binging this one, girl. I don't get there.
I wonder, Gibson, maybe he knows the answer. Is that just kind of an accidental dark pattern where the A/B test won? I mean, it sounds, it's kind of like on this border of dark pattern where it's like, yeah, we do want to, we know you're going to scroll because you're going to find the binge watch show, but we want to show you the show that you might also like before you get to that.
I mean, if it is, it's causing me to want to egg their office. Like, I just, like, I want... like,
Don't do that.
And you can tell them that they just don't care about... They don't use Hulu the way, like, we would, like, want to watch Hulu. They're just, like, they don't, like, don't... It just feels like you're fun. They don't care at all. You open HBO Max, it's like, and then it's, like, immediately just sadness and, like, loading problems.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay. Dasha?
I don't know. I'm so afraid of saying someone's company is in this room because I feel
Why
like
don't
it's
you
going
just
to happen to
anonymize
me.
it? Just describe the experience.
Well, I mean, I
And
actually...
we'll
I'll-
guess.
shame
We'll
them.
just
Shame
guess.
them.
No,
Get the shame.
I'll
It's
pick some-
AWS.
No, I'll pick something broad. We actually talked about this at dinner last night because I kind of asked the question. I was curious about other folks because I didn't really know what to answer. And we came up with a good one, and this, hopefully this resonates. So I live in New York City. I don't drive cars, so whenever I travel, I have to rent a car. And anytime I get into a rental car, like I have no idea how to get this this main panel to work. Like I don't know how to play my, like unless I can connect to Apple CarPlay, I will never get music to work. Will barely get the temperature to work. And like hopefully it's in English, and if it's not, like I'm just not gonna pay attention to it. So we just talked a lot about like the car interfaces. Like and we talked a lot about how like there's new car companies out there that are developing very digital first. Obviously we talked a lot about Tesla and sort of how it's all very native, but then there's a lot of car makers who are trying to transition to being digital. They're all creating wildly different experiences. And so when you get into a car, you also have no idea how one car differs from the other. Like I don't even know how to get the gas tank to open anywhere. So I just thought I would make that a broad category.
I feel you on that. And getting to Apple Play
Yeah.
is almost, it's
Yeah.
a hidden gem if you can find it. All right, Andy, close us out.
Ironically, the first thing that came to mind for me was I have a luxury SUV. I have one screen up top that is just a display screen, another screen beneath it, which is a touchscreen display, and then I've got buttons and knobs underneath it, and none of this stuff talks to one another. I don't know who approved it, and they definitely didn't do any testing on the way out, so...
I will just plug, I drive a piece of software. I have a little Tesla Model 3, and it's a wonderful experience because it's just all designed in there. Every button does what you think it's going to do, and they're buttons that make fart noises, which makes my kids very, very happy. So, I mean, it really has it all. All right, Spicy Panel, thank you very much. We timed it well. We will adjourn. Thank you very much. Kirsten, back to you.